What if I told you there are a few things you do each day that make all the difference? Well, today we're going to talk to you how to maximize that portion of your business. And if you stay till the end, we're also going to teach you how to manage strategically the other 80% of the stuff you do. Hey, welcome to Blunt Force Business. I'm Brian LaFauci.
And I'm Patrick Marino.
And in today's episode, we are going to be talking to you about the 80-20 rule to maximize your business with a focus on time management. So if you've been watching our videos, we have a style that we've normally gone with, which is we go through the blunt force facts throughout the course of the video. Well, we're going to switch that up a little bit, and we're going to start the video with the 3 blunt force facts right out the gate, and then we're going to get into them a little bit more. So our blunt force fact for today, for the 80-20 rule for time management, number 1 is 20% of what you do is what makes all the difference.
So we're going to get into it a little bit, but according to some science and the famous Italian economist, the 80-20 rule teaches us that 20% of what we do is going to lead to most of our output, right? It's going to be 80% of our output is going to come from 20%. So what we're really going to talk about is how do we figure out what that 20% is, because we're going to want to make the most out of that.
That's it. And then blunt force fact number 2 is the other side of that, which is 80% of what you do is holding you back.
So yeah, this is like the converse of blunt force fact number 1, right? So it's like if the small amount of the things that we do is going to have this great impact on our business, and that means there's a whole bunch of stuff that we're doing that is not. So we're going to teach you how to manage that if you keep watching the video.
And the blunt force fact number 3 for today is that progress is better than perfection. And you've heard us say that before.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that this is a big part of accountability, but also like not stressing yourself out. And a lot of what the 80-20 rule, the 20-80 rule, however you want to describe it, teaches you that you can't be 100% efficient, right? And this is like a natural law, like this 20-80 thing. So don't hold yourself to 100% perfection. Right?
Awesome.
It's iterative, right? We're going to go through it. We're going to see how it works. And then we're going to review it. And we're going to try and make it better.
And you can correct my grammar as we jump right in. But talk to me right out the gate about the Pareto principle.
The Pareto principle. Yeah. So what I know about it, and this is how I first got introduced to it as a way of understanding this kind of natural process where if you kind of let market conditions or if you kind of let people just do whatever they want to, then everything kind of ends up in this 20-80 split. And one of the examples might be music acts, right? So there's, hundreds of thousands of music acts in the world, but how many of them do people actually listen to? And if you went through it, you'd probably figure out it kind of fit into this 80-20 split where it's like 20% of the acts get all of the listens, and the other 80% are fighting for crumbs, and a lot of them don't get any listens. And why is that? There are a number of different reasons. One is because somebody gets popular, right? And say like a Taylor Swift or something like that. Taylor Swift gets popular, and now I tell you about Taylor Swift, and now you like Taylor Swift, and now we're listening to Taylor Swift all the time, and that just compounds. But because we're listening to the small number of acts, we're less likely to listen to the rest because we like. So why would we listen to the other stuff? Why did we have to listen to the other stuff? No. So it's like a natural law. Things kind of sort themselves out that way. And it has all sorts of consequences to all sorts of things. And we're going to be very specific today and talk about how it affects time management in a business. But if you really think about it, it applies to income inequality to a certain extent. And it applies to just about anything where you kind of let things sort themselves as they are.
Right. I love the music example. I'm
you always love music examples.
I do, because I love music, and what I've always been amazed at is there is so much good music out there that just slides it sits in the 80% rule. A little different than time management, but I always look at it and say, man, like I've gone to see some amazing artists that don't fall into that 20%, and
the economists might say that there's becomes barriers of entry, right? And that's one of the problems with like monopolistic companies, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like everybody has all these great ideas. Google becomes the number 1 search engine, but then it becomes really hard to pierce into that, right? Now now you have to work even harder than you would have at the beginning to have any impact, right? So that's part of one of the consequences of the Pareto principle, is that there become these barriers of entry in the market that make it more difficult to compete.
Yeah. So as we get on and as you get into the video a little bit towards the end, we're going to get into a worksheet discussion with how you can kind of lay this out. But as we get into the conversation first, looking at the 20%, like this starts with identifying, all right, you got to start somewhere, and it has to be identification of what the 20% of meaningful shit is, right? So what are the things that we actually should be doing? And that's going to differ for all of us, but what's not going to differ is like some key points of it and how we get to that end thing. So some of the things that I think our listeners can start thinking about are like thing number one, that obviously is a 20% thing that has to happen. That's really important, is high level strategy discussion, right? That's, I mean, right out the gate, that is an important piece of any business development. What else is there? Well, real strong, meaningful interactions with your stakeholders and your clients. Those are really, really important things that you should be thinking about, as well as meaningful meetings. And we're going to talk about how in the 80% of wasting your time are meetings that you have.
I freaking hate meetings.
Or you go to that don't really fit into like being
impactful.
Important. Yeah, impactful, important. And then mindful, focused work. Those are some examples of things that you could start thinking about putting into that 20% bucket. And then...
Or how about the number one thing? Selling.
And
right? So like if you have a product where people have to pay money for, which most of us do, a product or service, right? Selling is the number one thing you have to do. It might be a consequence of other things, but if you're not selling, then you're not in business. So that's obviously got to be part of that 20% as well.
Wellness is something that we preach all the time that needs to be in there as well. And part of that, and we say start all of your calendars and build, and we're going to get into calendar build out in a little bit later in the video, but start all your calendars with wellness, right? Wellness and family.
There's going to be some things like as we get into kind of organizing this for you, the obvious things that impact your bottom line and your business and your day, your sales, these important meetings that you have, your high level strategy, but less you might not think about wellness, right? And you think about the consequences, like what if I'm not well? What if I'm unwell? What if I'm sick? What if I'm tired? What if I'm stressed, right? Mm-hmm. Those things are going to negatively impact my business. So I better freaking make it a priority. Is right? What else can we fit into that kind of like non-obvious
team building
category?
Team building and coaching, mentorship, right? The growing of your team is extremely important for anyone who's looking to grow their company. It has to go from, especially the ones that start out just, hey, it's just me, I'm starting out.
Yeah.
The only way to transition that from, hey, it's just me, to the same quality and consistency as we grow is with coaching, mentorship, and team building.
Yeah.
So that has to be in there. And it has to mimic the meeting concept as well.
Yeah.
So just saying, we get together every week. Like everyone, quote unquote, I shouldn't say everyone, most people do this. We get together every week. But what is what's the impact of that week?
Right.
Right. Is because
you can improve it, is what you're saying.
Absolutely.
We used to have like a Thirsty Friday where it was like at the end of the Friday, the beers would come out in the office. But back when I was like 25, beers would come out on Friday in the office.
Yep.
Right. It was kind of like an end of week celebration. Yep. It had a team building component, but it wasn't highly structured. And we can talk about how you might want to manage that.
Right. And then I think branding's another one that falls into that category.
Because it's like one of those things that people don't want to do.
Brand.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's like one of those things you don't want to think about, but like it's important.
Building brand champions. So as you're conceptualizing this, in that 20% of the really most important things you're going to doing, in our opinion, those things should be in there. Those are part of real growth and really taking your time management and making it effective. So what are some examples of less impactful tasks that we all do that fall into the 80% rule where you got to do it, right? So why are they on there? If they're in the 80%, well, why not just dump them? Because most of the time you have to do them.
There's some things you just have to do.
Yes.
And maybe as a business owner, you don't want to be the one doing it, but
most people start out doing it.
Yeah, you have to do it. Yeah.
The biggest one that falls in this list is routine admin work. That's why I think you see businesses as they grow their first hire is like, I need an admin.
Yeah, for sure.
I just need to.
This is the stuff I don't want to do.
Yeah, I need to offload this from my bucket of time, which is a smart offload. It really is. You get to that point. Networking, people put that going out, networking.
Yeah, because it's not, it's a very like, it can be like a very, something that you have to do. Like you have to get to know people, you have to shake hands, you have to have a face. And it could be kind of maybe for certain businesses as part of the 20%, right? But for the rest of us, I think it's just something we have to do, and it has to be part of our day at some point.
The other piece that often we do that falls into this is the unnecessary meetings or unproductive meetings. Meetings because, we meet every Monday. That's what we do. And then it just gets into those things fall so easily into the mundane and non-impactful, where employees will just be like, oh, we got that.
I hate
ridiculous
meetings.
Meeting.
The last big company I contracted with, they had meeting paralysis. Yeah. And I remember one of the things I did as a contractor is I really tried to wear down that process. And I would just ask little, like, I'm not passive aggressive, but like leading questions, like, like what did we get? Because what you're doing with a meeting, and the CEO ended up actually putting it best, because at the end of the meeting, he was like, after I'd worn them down a little bit, he was like, there's 5 people in this meeting right now, and that's an hour out of every one of these people's day. Take everybody's salary and figure out, did we get whatever the hour's worth of that person's salary, did we get that out of this meeting? And if we didn't, then there's something wrong with the meeting, or we shouldn't have had it.
Right.
And can that meeting be an email? Can it be a Slack discussion? Can it be like some sort of like contribute when you can to an email thread or a Slack thread or some sort of discussion, whatever it is.
Right.
And I think that meetings is a big thing for me. That's freaking pet peeve. I hate meetings. Like, I think it was Elon. Who was the first person who said, can this meeting be an email? It's like the most insightful thing in the freaking world. Yeah.
And I think for our listeners, as we'll get to this a little more, but starting to think about why is a meeting not impactful and what makes a meeting impactful. And a lot of that is purposeful planning. And how, if you are showing up to your meetings that you're scheduling and telling people to be at, and have put no time into the preparation other than thought about what we're going to talk about, in my estimation, that meeting is more than likely at risk for falling into this category.
Effective meetings is probably a whole separate conversation.
Yep. But we want to be doing the 20% meetings, not the 80% meetings, right?
I think we just eliminate the ones that are not impactful.
Exactly. And
so some of the stuff in this 80% is going to be things that you just eliminate.
Yes.
Some of it is stuff you have to do, like order office supplies.
Yep.
Do invoicing. Yep. Networking, whatever it is. And then the rest of it, like these meetings, are like one of the things I was thinking about as we were having this discussion is just this kind of over-analysis. We actually, because we do a business building call every week, and this came up from a couple of the people. It's like I have to stop focusing on the stuff I can't control, right? So for example, or stuff that on a micro level, at my level, doesn't make sense. One of the things we talk about is social media, right? You start a social media strategy. Yep. And at our level, where we're a small business and we're not super influencers, on a day-to-day, hour-to-hour basis, those little posts and those metrics mean nothing. Right. Because we're so small. We have such a small audience. So it's like me posting on Instagram, and this week, something we've talked about in the previous video, we posted something and it freaking went viral, and you're watching it go up and up and up and up. And then the next time you post it, you don't see it move. But then before you know it, now you've wasted a couple of hours every day
just checking on this
checking to see how the freaking Instagram post went.
Over analysis of data.
Yeah, and that's anything you're over analyzing, things that you can't control, in particular on a micro level, things that you just shouldn't be focusing on. Right. Or manage it by doing it quarterly, reviewing your, you need to be doing social media, you need to be posting frequently, creating content. Yep. But instead of looking at it every single minute of every day and kind of staring at your screen and wondering why things aren't changing, you put time in where it's going to be every quarter we're going to review the strategy. And
that's where the time management piece of this is so important, that, where we set it, we get it on the calendar, we allocate, and we're going to give you a process coming up on how to allocate that time appropriately. You allocate the time, you do it so it gets done, and then you got to move on. And obviously you're going to review the process on a regular basis, but what you're not going to do is do that, what you just said, and continue to spend all this time on this thing that we already said falls down here in the 80%. And so we need to do it, but we're going to find a time effective way to do it, forget it, and move. Right. So, and that can be very difficult. Because you track the wrong metrics, like views, which
For sure.
is a wrong metric.
And I think when we were putting this discussion together, we kind of came up with this overarching concept for the 80-20 rule, is that we are going to maximize the 20, but manage the 80.
Absolutely. Yep. And, one more we want to bring up, and then we'll kind of move on. But that fits into these blunt force facts that we're giving you is multitasking. And we've done a whole video on multitasking. Yeah, we did. And
you can't multitask. It's not an actual thing.
It is a blunt force fact that you cannot multitask. And when you do, you don't have a focused intention on what you're doing right in the moment. It doesn't make, I know so many in both business owners and workers, like good employees, that pride themselves, and they'll put it like, I'm a great multitasker.
Or they freaking pet peeve. Like the company will ask in the freaking job description.
Yeah, can you multitask?
Needs to be good at multitasking. Yeah. It's freaking impossible.
Yep. How about you get really good at doing something with purposeful intention and then finishing it and moving on?
Exactly.
Yeah. Because I think that is a differentiator.
So one of the things we wanted to make sure we did with this episode is not just teach you about what the consequences of the 80-20 rule and kind of go through what the 20% are and what the 80% are. Let's walk through how people can now use this and make a plan that can actually impact their day-to-day, their week-to-week activities.
So before we get into kind of a step-by-step on a worksheet, let's just talk through steps that you should be taking advantage of. And one thing that starts this whole thing off is to set SMART goals, right? So you set goals for your company. We've heard that word SMART goals right off the gate. You set goals for your company.
What's the SMART? Do you know what it stands for? It's an acronym, Brian.
Yep. Measurable, attainable, SR&T, I always forget. But I know the concept. Go ahead.
Measurable is M.
Yeah, I know. What's S?
I can't remember what S is. T is time, because like if you can't have a time limit, then you can't reach it, right? And I think it's is R realistic?
Yep.
Attainable is A. It doesn't matter. They have to be measurable. You have to be able to, and it has to be realistic, right? Because if you set yourself this goal, we've had examples with it before in the past where it's like, hey, I want to make $1 million. Well, if I'm making zero right now, that might be unattainable. And then you're failing. You're setting yourself up for failure.
Right.
You want to set yourself up for success.
The big things with the quote unquote SMART goal is this. You need to have a time frame on the goal. You want to accomplish it by this time. It needs to be measurable. So like I want to do gooder is not measurable. Well, sometimes it is, but
I do gooder every day.
You do gooder every day. But it needs to be a measurable thing. I want to go from A to B, or my sales to go from this number to that number. Whatever it is, you have to put a measurable, tangible thing to it. And it needs to, like Patrick said, it's got to be realistic. And sometimes to get to realistic, you need to involve some mentorship there in that discussion. People who maybe have done it before and will tell you, hey, and that these are a lot of our consulting conversations we have with our clients. It's all right. What's a realistic, we'll have clients that come to us and they'll say, all right, I want to grow to X. And that's where I think we help with the realistic piece of that, of like in a normal environment of scaling and growth. And with this plan, that's going to probably happen in 2 to 3 years, not in 6 months like you think, right? Because it's just, so that's what you need to set. The other great thing to do to start this process is you want to talk them through the tasks, taking every task.
I think we start off with the goals, but I think the next part is to literally go through your week and list down everything you're going to do that week. Or everything we do on a continuous basis. It can be in a micro. What do we do every day? It could be in a week. I think probably starting off with a week probably makes more sense because the day-to-day can be very different. Whereas usually I feel like weeks are more consistent than days.
As long as you encapsulate everything your business
you got to make
does.
a list. Here's all the things we do from these important sales meetings to ordering the pens and making sure that the systems are working properly and the lights turn off at the end of the day. I mean, like every single thing, write it all down. And then
we do the line game.
Yeah.
Right. So now we take now you're literally going to take those tasks, and you're going to put a line to them to the goals you just established for the company, and see some of them aren't going to even really go to a goal. Very frequently,
we're going to eliminate the meetings. We're going to eliminate some stuff.
You'll
some of the stuff's going to be crossed off.
You know you got to do them, but they don't really. So if they don't tie well to a high level goal, they automatically go where? They go in the 80% rule of stuff that has to be done, but isn't really contributing to that bottom line or what your overall goal is.
You really got to go line by line with each task and say, how does this relate to the goal that we talked about? The more it relates to the goal, the more it goes into that 20% bucket. The less it relates, or if it doesn't seem to relate to the goal at all, but you still have to do it, it goes into that 80%.
And then the next step to that is you're going to take those tasks that most align to your goals that you need to accomplish, that are most closely tied, and those things, after you schedule wellness, family, and friends first on your calendar, because that always comes first, these things come second. So your calendar development. So the key here is calendar development. The key here is we're talking time management. And if you are not using an effective like digital calendar or like online calendar or there's some great calendar systems you can pay for if you're not good at this and you want like a software that helps you along, like with time blocking, whatever it is. But these now have to get blocked off. And to ensure they happen, they need to, and that they should be the bigger block of your time. There's 20%.
These go in first, and they are, just think of it the 80-20 rule means that 80% of your success relates to these 20% of these activities.
So it's almost like you want to flip it now. So now you want to flip it, and most of your time should be on this 20%.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Most of your time and your effort, your money, your hiring, like it all goes into this 20%.
Awesome. So now let's talk about all this other bullshit you got left with.
Exactly.
Because you're left with a lot of stuff on that list. If you've ever done this, it's a little overwhelming because now you have this myriad of stuff that you realize you're doing has not directly impacted the bottom line goals. And so how do you accomplish those? Well, this is where the strategic management is crucial. So delegation, right? Batching and grouping some of this stuff together and saying, are there things here we could accomplish together? And then like Patrick said, can we literally replace or remove some of this stuff completely? It's not unusual to find that through the process of just work and being in business, you start doing stuff that you didn't initially intend to do, and you're taking a lot of time doing, and you can't even relate it back to, like you went on the branch, right? You went down the rabbit hole with something, and now it's on this thing, and like, is this really necessary? Or is it necessary to do as frequent as I do, right? But now we have to fit it all in.
Another really important thing that we could be doing is automation, right? And we've had one of our previous videos, we talked about having a website chat and how you can script some of that out. And if you think about some of the brands and the companies that you interact with as a customer now, whether it's a business to business thing, like for me, it's a lot of software stuff, or it could be anything you're doing, you're asking a question about a product that you want to buy. And now you're interacting with a robot where it's like you ask the first question is answered, the second question is answered, or it's guiding you to some sort of help resource, or it's checking your order it's like all this stuff is done by robots now, AI. So how much time does that save in your day when you don't have to answer those questions? And like it's immeasurable, and it might be an expense.
Yes.
Like what you've done is you've just taken that whole part, something that you have to do but doesn't really impact your bottom line, and you've made it this automated system that you don't even have to ever really. You have to look at it, make sure it's working,
right?
But you don't have to work at it that often because it's automated. It's on cruise control.
So if we're going to look at this and say, well, what are the main ways that we would advise you to start offloading this or breaking it down? It's batching stuff together. It's using technology, right? Using technology to kind of assist in these things. So you take a little time to build out these technology systems that take some of the stuff. It's having smart, impactful meetings where they're doing what you need them to do, and maybe they're a little less frequent, but they're targeting goals. It's offloading. So interns are a great way to offload work. You have to look at the value of your time. And a lot of times as the owner, your time is the most valuable of anyone else in the company in a lot of cases. So if you have to pay a contractor or someone to do a little bit of this work at a lower rate than you're worth so you can focus on the 20%, then it's time to bite the bullet and maybe onboard someone to work a couple hours a week and get this off your plate, because it's taking away from the stuff that's really working.
I think it's really important. Sometimes I equate the two things together, but we talked about putting wellness in first, but you also want to put in nothing.
I love
there needs to be time for nothing.
Wellness,
there needs to be time for nothing. It's a mental reset. It's a break, and that includes, we just talked about the fact that you want to prioritize the friends and the family stuff. That includes from the friends and family. There needs to be periods where there is nothing, because that is going to be a big part of your recharge, right? You're plugged in, and you're just sitting there doing nothing. And that's, maybe it's not nothing, but like whatever it is, it's literally a time for you to do whatever you want to do. And it's not related to the business. Right. We talked about in the past, the growth comes, right? When you're lifting weights, it breaks down. You're not getting stronger from lifting weights. You get stronger when you're sitting around after you've lifted the weights, because your body is repairing itself.
Yes.
And that's what you need to do. Take that reset yourself, give some time in there.
You want to talk through the worksheet really quick?
We didn't talk about the last part, which is that, and it's probably, I'm surprised Brian missed this, because it's like one of his most critical things.
Right, can I jump in?
You say it. Yeah. He's going to get all excited.
All right. One of the things you always do with anything like this is you schedule time as you're blocking out this calendar on it, either whether it be a monthly or quarterly, whatever you think you want to devote to. I want to give this a 3-month run, and then you're going to rinse, wash, repeat, and reevaluate. Okay. So you want to set this up as something that you put in a calendar system so it happens all the time. Rinse, wash, repeat, rinse, wash, repeat. And then when you get to maybe 3 months, you're going to reevaluate. And then you're going to adjust again. And then you're going to do that because there is no stagnant in what we're doing. There is moving forward. There's making changes. There's improving. The minute you get stagnant, the 7 million new businesses that start up every year are right on your ass, and they're going to do it better. So that's why the reevaluate is so important.
Yeah, it's important because, like we said at the beginning, we're going to talk about the blunt force facts again, but you can't be 100% efficient. Your job is to try this and then get better at it.
Yep.
The way to get better is to try and then look at how you did, and then reconfigure it and see if it works a little bit better the next time.
If you don't evaluate how you've done, then you're in the same boat you were right now, which is probably doing stuff that's not, because not everything you decide is going to work.
Right.
It's going to work probably at the 80-20 rule. Right. A good amount of it will work. 20% won't, and you have to dump it. Right. You have to go back.
Well, actually,
and dump it.
You did it wrong. The 20% are going to work, and then the 80% isn't.
Maybe it's that. Hopefully it's the other way.
This video is part of the 20% of your impactful activity in the day.
Yeah, absolutely.
So now that we've gone through it, make sure you check out the links in the description of this podcast or video. You're going to find a link to a worksheet that we put together that actually walks you through this. It's going to walk you through the process of listing your tasks, evaluating them against your goals, and then putting them into these buckets. So make sure you take a minute after you've watched this and click on that link and download the worksheet.
And you're welcome.
And work through it. Yeah, exactly. You're welcome. Blunt Force Business gift to you.
Awesome. Blunt Force fact number 1, 20% what you do makes all the difference. Blunt Force fact number 2, 80% of what you do is holding you back. And Blunt Force fact number 3, progress is better than perfection. I am Brian LaFauci.
And I'm Patrick Marino.
Until next time.
Thank you.